Thank you very much, Sheriff. Thank you for all of your thought and writing on this subject. We're going to proceed with the second round, and we'll begin with gentlelady from Georgia on the screen.
Thank you. Jerry, I want to talk to you specifically. Yeah. You're the aunt of Matthew Perna, who committed suicide after the agony of finding out that it was going to continue, the harassment, the persecution by the Department of Justice. Was Matthew Graves the prosecutor leading the investigation into your nephew?
Yes.
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 Matthew Perna, for everyone here, if you don't know, I'm sorry, Matthew Graves is the attorney for the Department of Justice that leads the investigation into many of you. And he has the special privilege of being able to prosecute crime here in Washington, D.C., and he's a U.S. attorney that can go after federal cases. He ignores 67% of the arrest here in Washington, D.C., but focuses and harnesses his office and their efforts on people like your nephew, people like you, John, people like you, Brandon, and so many others. And it's shameful. So, Jerry, I'm just going to ask you a few questions. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure you're speaking on behalf of Matthew and all of your family.
Yes.
If Matthew was here today, what do you think he would tell Congress that we need to do? What would he tell Matthew Graves that should happen?
Well, many of the things that he would say are the very things that are in the bill that you co-sponsored. The overreach of power, the change of venue. First of all, the change of venue. Let's look at that one. Because had Matthew been able to even fathom a fair trial, he would never have pled guilty. And that is what's going on with these defendants that are pleading guilty. They really have no choice. They know that they're not going to face a jury of their peers. And so they plead guilty. Why are they subjected to no change of venue? That is such an important aspect here. You wouldn't have the guilty pleas that you are having if they were given a chance at a fair trial. So they plead guilty, and not only are they already guilty in the court of public opinion, now that they've pled guilty, they're persecuted even more. Well, he must have done it. And that's what my nephew faced from his community, from the local media, from the national media. Well, he pled guilty. My nephew, when he called me the week that he hanged himself, he said to me on the phone, just sobbing, "Aunt Jerry, I must be guilty. I must be guilty. They're telling me I'm guilty. Everybody thinks I'm guilty." He was at that point where he actually believed it. But had he been given a chance to be fairly heard by a fair trial, he never would have pled guilty because he didn't do anything that deserved several years in prison. Mm-hmm. And I think you need to examine these constitutional rights first. And that's what Matt would say, because Matt believed in the Constitution. He believed in the Justice Department, and he loved the United States. He loved this country. He loved it so much. If you could look at pictures of Matthew from the time he was a baby, I swear to you, 90% of his photographs, he's wearing red, white, and blue. I'm not joking. I can show them to you on my phone. He was fascinated with the American flag, even as a child. He constantly pointed it out, whether it was driving down the road or in a magazine or in a commercial. He loved this country, and this country failed him miserably. And you have to understand that it's not just the January 6ers' lives who are being affected here. Their families, their friends. Matt's father suffers from Parkinson's disease. I cannot tell you how badly he declined after Matt's arrest. I wish you could see him now and see him 2 years ago. He's a different person. The effect is massive. So it is not just the people being arrested. It is their families, their friends. And it is the fear that has been placed in the Americans. Don't speak out. You may end up like a January 6er.
Yeah, that's right. I think that's how most people feel. Most people do feel that way, and it's because of the weaponized government. It's the weaponized government, and that's why we're committed to working everything we can do to stop it. Thank you, Jerry.
Well, thank you, Marjorie. I want to thank you personally for the articles of impeachment for Matthew Graves. I want to thank you for that and your fearlessness. You have been a huge supporter to me and my family. I am the speaker for my family. Matt's father is not capable of getting in front of this committee or any cameras anywhere to talk about his son. We're devastated beyond belief that this happened, but more so because it happened at the hands of our own government.
Yeah, I can't imagine actually. But we haven't done enough because people are still locked up. Their rights are still being abused. People like John face 3 years. Brandon can't get through an airport. I tell you what, you get more security than I get going through an airport, and that's backwards, completely backwards.
Can I add something?
Sure, of course.
When Brandon was talking about his experiences at the airport, I want you to know that it is not just the January 6ers. Matt's father faces absolutely the worst searches at the airport. Matt's girlfriend also. Matt's aunt on his other side of his family. These are people that never, ever faced issues with TSA. And now, every time they travel, they are held up by TSA. My brother's hands are swabbed. He is searched to the point of being embarrassed.
Were they there were they in Washington, D.C. on January 6th?
No, they were not, which is the craziest part.
Do they think their names are in the system?
Yes,
are they flagged?
Do.
Is this every time they travel through the airport?
My brother was just in the Cleveland airport, the Cleveland airport and the Denver airport 2 weeks ago, and I asked him if it occurred again. He said, unbelievable. He said, I was humiliated.
What happens? So they go through TSA, their hands are swabbed. Can you describe some of the things?
They are searched to the point where it's an invasion of privacy, honestly. And my brother, like I said, he walks with a cane. He has Parkinson's disease. And this happens to him every time he goes through an airport. I want him to come down to Florida, and he said, Jerry, I honestly don't want to fly anymore.
Can I ask, does anyone else have family members or know that this happens to their family members that were not, John, that happens to your family members and they were not in Washington, D.C.? Sarah, you don't know of it? Okay. Brandon, yes. Family members, friends that were not in Washington, D.C.?
Nowhere near Washington, D.C. People I've traveled with 10 years ago. This is happening to them, too.
I'll yield back. Sorry. I could talk to everybody all day long. Matt's giving me a hard time.
Dr.